Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm super excited to have with us today Dr. Avis. She is a media mogul and just crushing it in her career. So I had to hear her story, especially during Black History Month. Dr. Avis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
No problem. Well, tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, my name is Dr. Avis, and I am a media monetization mentor, meaning that I help entrepreneurs and subject matter experts understand how to leverage the power of their genius through the media in order to drive more leads, get more brand visibility, and to put more bank in their bottom lines. I also have an expertise in race, gender, and empowerment expertise. And so with that, what I do is I do, to some degree, a little bit of DE&I consulting. I've been known to do that in the past. And I do a lot of media commentary around issues of race, gender, and politics. I would say lastly, I am the owner of two businesses that are specifically more directly in the media lane. One is called Max Black Media. That will be launched later on the year. It's a new streaming service that we have coming down the pike. And I'm also the CEO of a Media Monetization Mentorship, which is a seven-figure mentorship organization that really teaches entrepreneurs how to really master marketing and sales in their businesses. So those are a little bit of all the different things that I'm doing.
Wow, fabulous. As we can see, you are definitely in the driver's seat for your career. So take us back to the beginning. When was the light bulb moment for you that you needed to be responsible for your career?
Yeah, so my PhD is in political science. And for anyone who has achieved a PhD, a doctorate degree, you will know that the culture of that education is to prime people for a professor role, for a tenure track position at a college or university. But I've always been one that's had a multitude of interests, right? The typical person with a PhD is an expert in that one thing that they got their PhD in, and not even just that one thing, and a little portion of that one thing. So for example, you might get your PhD in political science like me, but my specialty within that was race, gender, and the economy. So for most people, you'll go 100 miles deep in that one area of expertise, and you'd build your whole career around that. You'd write all your books around that. You'd write all your articles around that. You'd primarily teach all your courses around that when you get your tenure track positions. And that is the typical route of someone in the academic lane in terms of their career choices. I've known, though, however, from the very beginning that I wanted my life to be bigger than that in terms of my career interest, because though that is an area of special interest to me, and it's still something that is woven into parts of what I do to this day. So for example, I've been the editor-in-chief of the State of Black Women in America reports. This year will be the 9th annual iteration of that report. As I mentioned, I still do political commentary, largely on issues of race and gender, and my expertise in this area helps inform my perspectives on those issues. But it's not all that I do. So I knew from the very beginning that I didn't want to create a career that put me in a box, that pigeonholed me just in that one area of interest, when I knew that I had many areas of interest. And so the biggest thing that I did to help break out of that box was my second year into my tenure track position, because I went the way that most people go with PhDs. I made the decision that I do not want to try to get tenure. I want to live beyond this box. And so I asked for a year sabbatical. And during that year sabbatical, I came back to Washington, D.C., which is the area in which I received my PhD because of my love and interest in politics, and ultimately started a brand new career in D.C. that has continued to flourish in multiple ways, ultimately never going back to that tenure track position. So to me, the lesson that I learned is you can break out of the box that other people try to put you in. If you don't confine yourself to those limits, if you believe in yourself enough to try to go in a different path, if you believe yourself, follow your heart, and then follow that up with the hard work that takes to trailblaze that path, you can succeed in a multitude of directions, not just in that one direction that perhaps other people think you belong.
Wonderful. Well, that is a wealth of experience right there that you talked about. And I loved it that you talked about sabbaticals. I've taken one myself just to get clear. They are super powerful, especially if you're concerned about your path and your career and what to do. Sometimes
Absolutely.
they're unpaid. So, but you have to believe in yourself like you're talking about. But I love that you're talking about coming outside of the box. For those people that are listening that are feeling like they are stuck or in a box, how do you get the courage to break out of that box, even take the sabbatical? Because I know that it's a journey to decide to take a sabbatical, because it's a commitment. So how do you get the courage to make those bold decisions and then to sustain them to get to that career happiness point?
Well, I will say that when I took my sabbatical, it was not blind. So I knew that I probably would not be coming back to that tenure track position, because I knew that I wanted to do more than just teach about politics. I wanted to be intricately involved at that stage in my life in the creation of good policy and really deeply within the world of politics. And so I did take some time during my tenure track position to look for employment opportunities outside of academia, such that when I took my sabbatical, I did have a job waiting for me. Now, I could have chosen to stay in that job or leave after a year and go back to my professorship. What it did, it just allowed that slot to stay open for me to test the waters in a different career path. And if I didn't like it, I could have gone back to that university and continued along the trajectory of a tenure track professor. But when I took that path outside of the university and the ivory tower, I decided that actually I liked staying outside of the ivory tower. So I did not take that position. So to me, part of this is whenever you're looking to make any sort of career shift, a part of this requires that for a period of time, you might have to do two things at once in terms of maintaining your commitment to your current employment and your current job, what you're currently doing, but at the same time, put in the time that's necessary to prepare the nest for you to leap into that other direction. I'm not saying leap blindly, but for a minute, you're going to be doing two things at once, actually putting in the work in the new direction, as well as putting in the work where you are today. And then when you do make that shift, you will make it with a lot more safety and certainty in terms of being able to maintain your standard of living and ultimately go well beyond.
Well, can you talk to us about, based on your experience, I imagine even before you became a professor and that PhD track, what would you say your formula or the secret sauce, the ingredients for owning your career? What is your formula for successfully owning your career?
It's being very confident in your abilities and understanding that you have a zone of genius that is true, and that's completely yours. And it's also understanding that as you are traversing your way through your career, as you move into different areas, understand that that no one has complete mastery of a new area before they begin in that area. So I'm saying that to suggest that you shouldn't dim your opportunities because you discount your ability to thrive in that space because you've never done it before. No one's ever done anything before the first time they do it, right? And so what you really need to understand is that I have the ability to learn and to understand it based on all of the accumulated knowledge and experiences I've had in my past. One of my favorite quotes, for example, out of my book, How Exceptional Black Women Lead, is the definition of confidence that one of the women that I interviewed provided. And her definition of confidence was, confidence is not knowing that you have all the answers to begin with. Confidence is understanding that you have what it takes to figure it out in real time. And if you live with that as your underlying theme with regards to navigating your career, you are not going to subject yourself to limiting the opportunities that are before you. Instead, you will run right into those opportunities with the confidence that you have what it takes to figure it out and succeed after you get there, and not hold yourself back thinking that you have to be perfectly, quote unquote, prepared. By the way, there's no such thing before you take that leap.
Oh, that's just having me think, Dr. Avis, about entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Those words are so powerful for entrepreneurship because it's a lot of figuring out what you do not know and, perhaps haven't gone to school to be a successful entrepreneur.
Absolutely. You're exactly right about that. I have found that the biggest thing that I have done ever in my life that strengthened my confidence muscle is to be an entrepreneur. And at this point, to be a serial entrepreneur. And once you start down this path and you begin to meet with successes around this path, then you become fearless in the sense that you understand that you have the capacity within your mind to make real your imagination. That thing that you envision, that thing that only you can see, with strategy, effort, and continuous action and the right team of people around you, you can make it real, right? And I would say, unlike though, the previous experience that I had in terms of like creating my nest before I left and my tenure track position on my sabbatical to start my career in Washington, D.C. in the think tank space, which was my first sort of career leap. Once I made the career leap to entrepreneurship, it was a little bit more gradual and at the beginning, but then all of a sudden, boom, the floor was out from under me. And I will say it just really quickly. At that particular point in my life, I was the chief executive of a major nonprofit in Washington, D.C., had run into some specific challenges with that nonprofit. And with some things that were happening within it that I felt were very dangerous, quite frankly, and perhaps even unethical, that I had no ability to stop. And from people looking from the outside, it could seem as if those things might have been my decisions, right? And so given my position within the organization. And so I had to make a decision about, do I stay in this potentially precarious position that could potentially damage my professional reputation, or do I leave? And that was the first time in my life that I did leave a position without having that next position set up. But what it did do was that it provided me the space to embark upon the dream that I had and had for many years around entrepreneurship. And so that really was my first launching pad in terms of my first business, which was a consulting business. What I found with that, though, is that when you are put in a position like that, where failure literally is not an option, then you will do what it takes to succeed. And to this day, that really is the mantra with me and my various entrepreneurial opportunities. I believe in myself, and I will bet on myself every day of the week. Why? Because I know that I will do what it takes to succeed.
Love that. Love that. So what, if you had to come up with a title, I know you said you have a book, but if you had to come up with a title for your career body of work, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, that is a hard one. Let's see. It would definitely, I would say, my career body of work. Fearless. That would just, I guess that would be it. Fearless. To me, that is really what career success requires, whether it's within an organization, whether it is you developing your own business or organization. It requires you to test your boundaries of fear, or else you'll be stuck at the same level, right? So if your ambition is to just kind of stay at that, same level for the next 20, 30 years, then perhaps it doesn't require you to exercise your fear muscle. But if you definitely want to traverse a path to leadership, or if you want to start your own entrepreneurial pursuits, both of those things require a level of fearlessness. They require a willingness to quote unquote fail, but not to interpret those experiences as failure, but instead to interpret those experiences as learning examples or opportunities to learn and get better. And so unless you are willing to risk failure, you will always stay at the level where you're at. And that to me has been my biggest secret to success, is that I'm not fearful of other people's judgments. I'm not fearful of quote unquote failure, specifically because I don't look at it as failure. The only thing that I am fearful of is not living up to my potential. And so I live my life in ways that continuously stretch me. And that's what has provided for me the modicum of success that I've achieved.
That's amazing. How does one build that failure muscle?
Yeah, it is really by allowing yourself it's by allowing yourself the grace of trying things that are new, right? And then putting on almost like an imaginary white coat, like you're a scientist, and sort of psych yourself up by saying, this is an experiment and I'm going to try this. And then I'm going to analyze the data. I want to see what the results of this were. Was it successful? Did it underperform given what I expected? If it underperformed, what sort of data can I look at? What did I do that didn't go well? What did I do that went well? How can I reduce the things that did not go well and magnify the things that did? So, it requires you to allow yourself that grace where you are continuously pushing and pulling yourself in new directions, but from an analytical framework, so that you are moving forward strategically and with each iteration getting better and better and better.
Yeah, I love that you said the word strategic or strategically, because it feels like you need to invest the time and be strategic about your footsteps to what it is that you want in your career. Because I can remember being in corporate and just being very afraid and really conforming to what's expected and fit into the culture, et cetera, where you almost start to lose yourself on that. I know I certainly did. I won't speak for everyone, but that's how I felt. And it gets to a tipping point where you're like, enough. I've got to reclaim myself. I'm losing myself on this journey.
Absolutely. And it's easy to do that, especially in corporate culture, where there is a very strong normalcy of conformity, right? I mean, that really is a lot of corporate cultures are like that. And so that's easy to understand how one can do that. But it's probably like the biggest sort of advice that I would give people that are in that space, though, is to make sure that they build a good network of people whom they trust, whom can be their advocates, who can be, their sponsors, who can speak up for them, and make sure that those individuals know their ambitions and can help not only help them formulate a strategy to get to where they want to go within those organizations, but also be those people behind closed doors who are pushing and advocating for them when they're not in the room. The worst thing that you can do is make your ambitions, even in that situation, a secret. You need to make sure that that is shared with those people who can help you get there, and then do what you need to do in order to set yourself upon that path. And when those doors open for you, don't be afraid to jump.
That could be a title too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be afraid to jump. Well, as we begin to wrap up the conversation, Dr. Avis, I wonder, are there resources that you have found to be very helpful to you over the years in owning and navigating your career?
Absolutely. So, I would say just in terms of owning, navigating your career, I'll say a couple of different ones. On the one hand, if you are someone who is an entrepreneur, the first in that direction, one of my favorite books in that space is called Sell or Be Sold. And it's something that I oftentimes suggest that my clients read because it really helps them understand that selling is not a bad word. A lot of people are entrepreneurs because they have something wonderful that they want to share in the world with the world, but somehow they have a very bad connotation with the idea of selling. And guess what? If you're not selling, you're not going to be in business. So I think that sort of getting past whatever mental blocks you might have around selling is very helpful. And so I would definitely suggest that anyone who's in that entrepreneur space take a look at Sell or Be Sold. For those individuals who are in the career space and you're looking to move your way, up the career ladder, let's see. I mean, would it be horribly conceited to just say my book?
Go ahead, go on with it.
So I would have to say my book, How Exceptional Black Women Lead. With that book, I interviewed over 70 Black women in various different industries, everything including corporate America, nonprofit America, individuals who are very successful in politics, individuals who are social change agents. So I looked, and entrepreneurs. So I looked at Black women in all those different spaces, and they shared their secrets to navigating successful paths to leadership within each of their area chosen professions, without being necessarily bogged down by the weight of race and gender, which we know oftentimes precludes our ability to rise into leadership abilities. And I would also say that that particular book has been translated into French, and it's widely available and very successful as well throughout Francophone Africa and in Haiti. In those countries, it's called Femme Noire, Femme de Pouvoir, which means Black woman, woman of power. And so I'm always excited when I hear people tell me how helpful that book has been for them in terms of making them feel confident and giving them strategies that they've been able to use successfully for everything from negotiating that next raise to getting that next promotion.
Wonderful. Well, I have to touch on polishing your voice, because that is your specialty. You are all over the place, CNN, etc. And
Yeah.
so, I don't know if when folks are in corporate, they're really honing their voice and how
Yeah.
they show up. And that's your specialty. Any final nugget around honing your voice and how you show up internally or externally?
Absolutely. So I'm so glad you raised that point because it's so important. And this, once again, is something that I talk about in my book. You have to always be cognizant of the fact that there is a difference between having a job and having a career. And no matter what your job is today, most likely that's not going to be your entire career. And so for your career to really be one that's on an upward trajectory, people need to know who you are. People need to be able to hear your voice, meaning your perspective on things, your thought leadership. That needs to be shared with the world for opportunities to open up with you, not just in terms of within your current organization, but within your entire industry and beyond. When you have your voice impacting the world in that broad way, then a variety of opportunities come to you, are attracted to you. You become a magnet for opportunities. And so what that really means is understanding then how to leverage the power of media to amplify your voice, how to get published in the right places, how to show up on the right television shows or on the right podcasts even, right? In other spaces like this, where people can really get exposed to your thought leadership. When you do that as a career maven, whichever direction your career is on right now, that will help to open up so many future paths for you as well. It's really something that, I have found that my clients have been able to use to really, once again, magnetize opportunities to them in various ways.
Wonderful. Well, please tell our audience how they can stay connected with you if they would like to do so.
Absolutely. So they can stay connected with me by going to, first, I would say perfectmediapitch.com, perfectmediapitch.com. That's where you can go to get information about my next free class that I'll be offering to have instructions on how to develop a pitch so you can get published and so you can show up on television, radio, podcasts, and so on and so forth. They can also find out more about me specifically by going to MediaMonetizationMentor.com.
Love it. Well, Dr. Avis, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. And thank you for sharing all those gems and wisdom nuggets that you shared with the audience.
It's been my complete pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.